Hello and welcome back. Hope you had a nice weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks. So today we're going to dive into something that might seem kind of basic at first, but as we were doing the research for this, I was really surprised by how much there is to talk about. We're talking about black pepper and white pepper.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
These are two things that I think a lot of people probably have in their spice cabinet, and you might not even think twice about them. But there are some really interesting differences between the two.
Yeah, yeah.
It's amazing how two things can taste so different and look so different, but actually come from the same exact plant.
Absolutely.
So the sources that we dug into for this deep dive were a couple of articles, one from the Times of India, and then one from Dr. Axe. And yeah, we're going to kind of compare and contrast those and kind of give you the rundown on the differences between these two.
Okay, sounds good.
The goal here really is to kind of clarify, I guess, the key differences for you guys listening. So, we're going to talk about how they're processed, how those different processing methods lead to different flavors, when to use each type of pepper in your cooking, and then even some of the nutritional aspects of the two.
Gotcha.
One of the great things about the Detox Health channel is that we do a lot of these deep dives, and it gives you a chance to really get into these topics without having to go and read a bunch of articles and kind of sift through websites and all that. So
Definitely. Yeah, it's like a curated experience.
exactly.
Right.
So I guess to kick things off, let's talk about processing. I think that's where the real difference starts to emerge between the two, right?
For sure. I mean, that's what makes them so different, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're starting with the same plant, the Piper nigrum plant.
Uh-huh.
But then what you do with the peppercorns after you harvest them, that's what creates black pepper versus white pepper.
Gotcha. So maybe we could start with black pepper. How is black pepper made?
Yeah, so black pepper, as the Times of India explains it, it's made from green, unripe peppercorns.
Okay.
And basically, they take these peppercorns and they cook them briefly. It's almost like a quick blanching or like a flash boil.
Okay.
And then they dry them. They're left out in the sun to dry. And that drying process, that's what kind of leads to that dark, wrinkled appearance that black pepper has.
So it's like they've been out sunbathing or something and they've gotten all shriveled up.
Exactly. It gives it that characteristic look. And I think,
Yeah.
part of the flavor as well.
Yeah, interesting. So how about white pepper? So we've got these green, unripe peppercorns for black pepper. And then how is white pepper different?
So white pepper is actually made from ripe peppercorns. So they've been allowed to fully mature on the vine. And the key difference here is that the outer layer of the peppercorn is removed. So for white pepper, you're really just getting the seed.
Okay.
And how they do that is they soak the peppercorns in water, and that softens up the skin, the outer layer.
Right.
And then they're able to rub off that outer layer, so you're just left with that inner seed, and then that seed is dried. So it's kind of black pepper is keeping its clothes on.
You're right.
White pepper is going au
I
naturel.
like that. That's a great analogy. Okay, so that's super interesting. So basically you're getting rid of that outer layer and you're just left with the seed, and that's white pepper.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to make a huge difference in terms of the flavor.
Oh, yeah. Big time. I mean, you're dealing with a different part of the peppercorn at that point.
Totally.
So yeah, like you said, the flavor is completely different. Black pepper is known for its boldness. It's got that strong, pungent flavor, and it's got this really nice earthy warmth to it, and it's got that kind of significant heat, that classic black pepper bite.
Right. It's it wakes up your taste buds.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. It's not just the heat. Some people might think that white pepper is milder or whatever, but it's a totally different kind of flavor profile.
It's a different kind of heat.
Yeah.
Black pepper has that really sharp, pungent heat.
Yeah.
White pepper is more of a subtle warmth.
Okay.
Interesting. And it's interesting because of that soaking and removing process, sometimes you get a slight fermented or musty note in white pepper.
Oh, interesting.
Which you don't get with black pepper.
Okay, so that's interesting. It's not just the intensity of the heat. It's the actual the notes of the flavor are different too.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. And then what about the way they look? And obviously visually they're really different, but is there anything beyond that in terms of I don't know, other sensory differences, I guess?
Yeah, totally. So visually, black pepper is It's dark. It's often a little uneven, like the surface is kind of bumpy and a little bit irregular.
Right.
And so it can add a little bit of visual texture to a dish,
Right.
especially if you're using like coarsely ground black pepper or whole peppercorns. And
Yeah.
then, of course, you've got that really strong aroma, right? Like as soon as you grind black pepper, like that pungent peppery aroma like just hits you.
Yeah, it's very strong.
Yeah, it's very distinctive. Whereas white pepper, because it's that like pale kind of ivory color, it kind of blends in more. It's not going to add any like visual interest to your dish
You're
necessarily.
not going to stand out.
Yeah, exactly. And the aroma is a lot softer. It's a little bit sweeter even.
Interesting.
And that earthy note that I was talking about, that's a little more apparent in white pepper, but it doesn't have that like sharp pepperiness that black pepper has.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, we're starting to see some real like distinctions here between the two in terms of like the the boldness versus subtlety.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're visible or kind of invisible.
Right.
So I guess like how does all of this translate to like how we use them in the kitchen?
Yeah, so this is where like their culinary uses really diverge.
Okay.
So black pepper, as the Times of India kind of points out, like it's really your go-to workhorse for a lot of like savory dishes.
Okay.
You can use it in soups, stews, marinades, salad dressings. It's really good for seasoning meat, roasted vegetables,
Uh,
eggs, and like we were talking about that freshly ground black pepper. It can be a really nice finishing touch on like pasta dishes or like grilled things.
yeah, it's kind of like the all-around like spice rack workhorse.
Absolutely.
So, what about white pepper? Like where does it really shine?
So white pepper is really great for dishes where you want the flavor of pepper, but you don't want those like little black specks.
Right.
So think of like creamy soups or sauces or mashed potatoes. You want that nice, like smooth, uniform color.
Yeah, it's all about the aesthetics.
Exactly. And it's also really common in a lot of Asian cuisines,
Okay.
particularly like Chinese and Thai cooking.
Okay.
That kind of subtle flavor profile works really well in like hot and sour soup or like different kinds of stir fries.
Gotcha.
And it's also, good for just like lighter meals in general, where you want a little bit of like a gentle warmth, but you don't want to overpower other flavors.
Okay, so it's kind of like, black pepper for like making a statement, and then white pepper is kind of more like behind the scenes.
Exactly, yeah. Understated elegance.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so we've talked about how they're processed, the different flavors, how those kind of play out in cooking.
Sure.
Now let's talk a little bit about the health aspects. We know that both black and white pepper have some nutritional value.
Yeah, they're actually both pretty good for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so, I mean, at a basic level, both black and white pepper contain antioxidants,
Mm-hmm.
and they have anti-inflammatory properties. They're good for digestion,
Okay.
and they can even help with nutrient absorption.
Interesting.
So, like, just by virtue of being, pepper, they kind of have this big line of, like, health benefits.
It does in the same family.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Axe's article seemed to like kind of go a little bit deeper into like some specific benefits associated with white pepper.
Right.
So maybe we can talk about some of those.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, what were some of the things that stood out to you?
Yeah, so one of the things that was really interesting was the focus on white pepper's potential to help with inflammation.
Okay.
And Dr. X kind of pointed to a couple of things. First of all, it's got, a lot of antioxidants, like we talked about, but it also contains this compound called piperine.
Yep.
And piperine has been studied in animals, and it's shown to have anti-inflammatory effects.
So it's not just like general anti-inflammatory. It's like this particular compound?
Yeah, this specific compound.
Okay, that's interesting.
They mentioned studies involving rats with arthritis.
Okay.
And they found that piperine seemed to like really help with the inflammation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So what else did Dr. Axe talk about?
Another thing that was interesting was that white pepper is really good for digestion.
Okay. Yeah. We
Yeah.
touched on that a little bit, but like what specifically?
Yeah. So again, piperine plays a role here. Piperine can actually stimulate the release of digestive enzymes in your gut.
Oh, wow.
And it can also increase saliva production.
Okay.
And there have been some animal studies, and Dr. Axe was citing these, that showed that like when animals were given piperine on supplements, it actually led to an increase in digestive enzyme secretion.
Oh, wow.
And it also shortened the transit time of food.
So things are moving through more quickly.
Exactly.
So that's super interesting. And then what else stood out to you from the article?
Let's see. So the article also emphasized, again, that white pepper is a great source of antioxidants. Coming from Piper nigrum, it's just like a really good source of antioxidants, which, are important for fighting free radicals and, protecting against all sorts of chronic diseases.
Right.
And then there's this really, really interesting connection to curcumin absorption.
Oh, yeah. That was a big one.
That's a big one. So curcumin, is that like star compound in turmeric,
Right.
which we all know is like a superfood.
Yeah, it's like everyone's talking about turmeric these days.
Turmeric is like the spice of the moment for sure.
Yeah.
But the thing is, curcumin on its own, it's not that well absorbed by the body.
Okay.
But Dr. Axe explained that piperine, which is in white pepper, can actually significantly increase the bioavailability and absorption of curcumin.
Wow.
They cited an animal study where they found that piperine could increase curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%.
1,000%. That's insane.
That's huge.
That's not like a little boost. That's like
That's a game changer.
Total game changer.
So, like, if you're taking turmeric supplements or you're, like, using turmeric in your cooking, adding a little bit of white pepper to it can really help your body, like, actually use that curcumin.
Wow. That's a really good tip. Okay, so 2,000%, we'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Were there any other, like, specific health benefits that stood out to you?
Yeah, there were a couple of others. So they also talked about white pepper's potential to help treat diarrhea. Yeah. There was a study published in the American Journal of Chinese Medicine back in 2013, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And they found that stir-fried white pepper was actually effective in reducing the frequency of diarrhea in children.
Oh, wow.
And then, again, some animal studies have shown that piperine has antidiarrheal effects.
Okay.
So there's some evidence to suggest that, white pepper could be helpful for that.
Interesting. Okay.
And then the last thing that Dr. Axe touched on was its potential to decrease blood pressure.
Okay.
So white pepper is virtually sodium-free.
Yeah.
And there have been some animal studies and test tube studies that suggest that piperine might be able to prevent increases in blood pressure.
Okay.
And even help to dilate blood vessels.
Wow. So it's like this piperine is like the star of the show, it sounds like.
Piperine is doing a lot of work.
Yeah, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting. Okay, cool. So it sounds like white pepper, beyond just its flavor, could actually be like a real health, asset, I guess.
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's get into specifics. Like, what's the actual like nutritional breakdown of white pepper? Like, what are we looking at per serving, according to Dr. Axe?
Yeah. So Dr. Axe gives us a breakdown for 1 tablespoon of white pepper, which is about 7 grams.
Okay.
And in that serving, there are about 20.7 calories.
Okay.
4.8 grams of carbs.
Okay.
A very small amount of protein and fat.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually a pretty decent amount of fiber. About 1.8 grams of dietary fiber.
That's a lot of fiber for a spice.
Yeah, it is. It's a good amount.
Ooh.
And then in terms of like micronutrients, it's a really good source of manganese.
Okay.
Providing about 15% of your daily value.
Okay.
And it also has about 6% of your daily value of iron. And then there are smaller amounts of some other good things like copper, vitamin C, calcium, magnesium.
Okay.
And it also has trace amounts of riboflavin, phosphorus, and zinc.
Wow. So it's like it really is like packing a nutritional punch, considering how little of it you actually use.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that spices like aren't just about flavor.
Yeah.
Like, they can actually like add some nutrients to your diet too.
Totally. Okay, cool. And then Dr. Axe also talked about like some other kind of like less common uses for white pepper, right?
Yeah. So they kind of delved into some traditional uses beyond just like cooking and the general health benefits that we talked about.
Right.
So they talked about, historically white pepper has been used in traditional medicine.
Okay.
For things like digestion, helping with bloating, creating diarrhea, and of course enhancing that curcumin absorption that we talked about.
Right.
And then they even mentioned some like anecdotal cosmetic uses, like people using, softened white pepper as an exfoliant in like facial scrubs. or in hair masks to like combat dandruff.
Okay.
Although they do kind of like caution that these uses haven't been like rigorously studied.
Right. So maybe don't go like ditch your regular skincare routine just yet.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting to know that people have used it for those purposes.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. So what else? What else did they talk about?
So in traditional Chinese medicine, white pepper is used to like clear phlegm.
Okay.
And they talk about addressing what they call like dampness.
Okay.
And it's thought to have warming properties, which can be good for like joint pain.
Okay.
And then in Ayurveda, white pepper is considered to be particularly good for balancing the kapha dosha.
Okay.
And it's thought to help with congestion, digestion, heart health, fat burning, pain relief.
So it's like, it's really interesting how these spices have like such a deep history.
Yeah.
Like beyond just like, oh, it tastes good in my food.
Exactly.
Like they've been used for, centuries for all these different purposes.
Yeah. And it really highlights like how, these ingredients that we might take for granted, like they really have like this long history of like medicinal use.
Totally.
And, it's interesting to kind of like tap into that traditional knowledge and like see how they've been used for, different things over time.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
So speaking of centuries, I thought it was really interesting how Dr. Axe like talked about the history of pepper.
Oh, yeah. That was really cool.
Like it's been around for like a really long time.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to think how long pepper has been like a staple in human history.
Right.
Like it's been used in Indian cooking for at least like 4,000 years.
Wow.
Going all the way back to like 2000 BCE. And in ancient times, pepper was so valuable. Like it was literally referred to as like black gold.
Wow.
And it was like a major like trading commodity.
It's crazy to think about that. Like that's how valuable it was.
Yeah, like people were like traveling the world and like trading, fortunes for pepper.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Okay. So what else did they talk about in terms of the history?
Well, one of the things that I thought was really interesting was that they found black peppercorns in the nostrils of the mummy of Ramses II.
Well, seriously?
Yeah.
Like that was part of the mummification process.
Yeah. So it shows you like how significant pepper was in ancient Egypt.
Wow.
And then, of course, pepper was also highly valued in ancient Greece.
Oh.
It was a key seasoning in the Roman Empire. And then beyond just like the culinary uses, people used it medicinally for all sorts of things like toothaches, constipation, insomnia.
Okay.
Some people even believed that it could help with eyesight.
Wow. So it was like a real cure-all.
Yeah, it was like the ancient like wonder drug.
Okay, that's fascinating. So, I mean, it really puts into perspective how like we just kind of like shake it on our food now. But back then it was like...
Well, it was precious.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was a really big deal. Okay, cool. So I guess like bringing it back to our kitchens today, like what's the takeaway? When do you choose white pepper versus black pepper?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it really comes down to like what are you making and what's your personal preference?
Right.
Like both sources kind of emphasize that.
Okay.
So, if you want something bold, aromatic, and you want that visual interest like we were talking about, black pepper is like the clear winner there.
Yeah.
But if you're going for something more subtle, and you want it to blend in, like especially with lighter colored dishes, then white pepper is the way to go.
Okay.
So I think both of them are really essential to have in your pantry because they both bring something unique to the table.
Totally. Yeah. It's not a case of like one being better. It's just different tools for different jobs.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay. Well, before we wrap things up, I know that Dr. Axe mentioned like a couple of potential side effects associated with both types of pepper. So I thought it was worth mentioning those.
Yeah, it's good to be aware of those.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the most common side effect that you'll probably experience is sneezing.
Right.
And that's caused by the piperine.
Oh, so it's that piperine again?
Peperine's like the active ingredient in a lot of ways, both good and bad.
Yeah.
Also, be careful when you're handling pepper, like when you're grinding it. Don't get it in your eyes. It can be irritating.
Yeah.
And, as with any food, some people might be allergic to pepper.
Right.
So, if you experience any like hives, swelling, pain, those could be signs of a food allergy. So just something to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we've covered just about everything, right?
I think so.
So to recap our little pepper deep dive here,
Mm-hmm.
um, we've learned that like this one simple thing, like how you process the peppercorns,
Right?
whether you just dry the whole peppercorn or you soak it and peel off that outer layer,
Mm.
that really leads to like some huge differences in the flavor, the appearance,
Right.
and ultimately how you use it in cooking.
Absolutely.
And then, we know that both black and white pepper offer some general like nutritional benefits,
Mm-hmm.
but white pepper, according to these sources, seems to have like some specific advantages, like that
Yeah.
whole curcumin absorption thing.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's a big white.
And then, the anti-inflammatory properties of piperine. So,
Right.
okay, cool. Well, I guess like the next time you're, at the grocery store or, in your kitchen and you're reaching for the pepper, just take a minute to like think about, which one is going to like best complement your dish
Mm-hmm.
and, your personal taste preferences.
Yeah, and I think it's fun to experiment too.
Yeah.
Like try both types of pepper in your cooking and just see what you like.
Yeah, totally.
See how it changes the flavor of the dish.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. Well, I have a little thought for you guys, as we wrap things up here.
Okay.
Um, we talked about how like this one tiny little change in processing,
Mm-hmm.
like just removing that outer layer of the peppercorn
Right.
can lead to like such huge differences in like
Ah.
the characteristics of the pepper and the health benefits and all that.
Right.
It really makes you think about like how many other like subtle things we do with our food
Yeah.
that might have like these huge effects that we don't even realize.
It's a good point. It's like we often like focus on the big picture, but it's those like little details that can really make a difference.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that brings us to the end of our pepper deep dive.
Great deep dive.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So if you guys found this as fascinating as we did,
Yeah.
and you want to learn more about, healthy living and all sorts of other interesting topics,
Yeah.
make sure you head over to the Detox Health channel.